the voice of the Avon on 101.3 FM. And I'm still here with my man. He's just on point all the time. He's the guy who's came in and saved my butt. I had no guests this week, and he's coming in. He's giving me interesting content, and he's got a fabulous radio voice. Give it up for Frank.
Thank you, Nick. You are so kind.
Only what you deserve, man. Only what you deserve, and not even that. So you've had a lot of struggles going through as an independent author. Do you want to just go through the beginning of, like, kind of, without getting, obviously you don't want to go too far into it, but just with, what are some of the things you've had to face?
Well, the biggest single problem of being an author is probably writer's block. It's actually writing.
Yeah.
There are other problems, but so often if you're an author, you have a burning desire to share something with the world. You have wonderful ideas, things you imagine, images, stories, concepts, all sorts of things. And then when you get to putting pen to paper or sitting at a computer keyboard, you find that you just can't write. You just can't break through the barrier. You've got the ideas, you've got everything, and you just can't get it out there. And I find that's the biggest single problem.
Oh man, I can just imagine. So originally the second book didn't get the good numbers you wanted.
Yeah. There are practical problems too. If you want to operate as a business, as an author, it's very risky. It's probably better to do it when you've actually got another means of earning a living at the same time, or if you're rich, if you're lucky enough to be rich. Not many people are going to be rich. But what happens is if you've got another way of earning a living, it takes the pressure off you, because at the very beginning you're not likely to make much money. And you can break through into an industry slowly, but I found that the first book I wrote was free and was really meant to help other people. The second book was a fiction book that I wanted to make money from, but I found that it was very hard to sell, even though I had quite a lot of advertising.
Oh man, you had what was it, like 10,000 followers on Facebook?
I got 7,500 followers on Facebook and about 2,000 followers on Twitter. And I had an ad in 6 countries that got, like there were 120,000 clicks on my ad. So I assumed that my first book got good distribution. And then when I tried to introduce my second book and make some money from it, I got very few sales. And that is what I'd been warned, that as an independent author, you take a big risk. And the advice is, that the common wisdom is that if you're an author that's just starting out, you're better off finding an agent and a publisher than to go independent. But if you're independent, of course, you can make more money and you have more control over what you write. Yeah,
it's kind of like that thing I shared with you the other day. The guy, Hobson, he had no luck with the record label, but when he could control his output and how much he put it out of it and how quickly he could do things, but it's a two-edged blade. He could have gone exactly the opposite way, and he could have gone on to just be another, just do nothing. And it's almost like a massive. It's like almost putting everything you've got on black. If you don't, like you said, if you don't have another way of having income or savings saved up,
But I mean, even people who don't, they can still take a risk. And there've been some very successful authors.
Oh, for sure.
Who did very, very little at the beginning, like J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter series and everything.
Yeah.
And there are authors who have done incredibly well without too much struggle at the beginning, but it's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
And I think it's best to write for the fun of it, and because you really want to. It's the writing that you do will be better, and then eventually, when you start to make some money, and it's not very much, it won't be as threatening, because basically you're doing what you want to do anyway.
Yeah.
And if you've got that safety net, another job that you do, or heaps of money if you're rich, which is not very likely, but at least if you've got some safety net, you don't feel quite so bad if you're not very profitable as you're starting out.
Yeah, of course. And we were talking before about translating. You got getting a book translated into different languages. Go through the process of that.
Well, I've only written 2 books as an author. The first book has already been translated into Chinese.
Yeah.
And my plan is to introduce that into China for free it's a book called Words of Experience to help young gay people and young people in general, not only if they're gay.
Yeah.
And it's a very good time to introduce it to China. So I want that book to be free, just as it was.
Are you listening to Voice of the Avon on 101.3 FM? We're back here with Franco, man. It's just been one hell of a night for me, man. I'm just so... It's been a crazy night, man. So we were talking about your book, man, and how you're gonna get it translated and stuff. But what other things have you kind of done? Like you've done some promoting in Sydney, I believe, as well.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did that last year.
Yeah.
And I have business cards and go and talk to people about my book and hand them a card. I'm on social media as well. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel as well. So you can find me at www.wordsofexperience.com.au, and I have a new website now too, which is www.wordsbyfrank.com. But that new website it's up already, but it's not ready.
It's not polished.
So but it's still there, and soon it'll be ready. And to find me on Twitter and Facebook, use the handle Words by Frank. So in other words, twitter.com/wordsbyfrank, or www.facebook.com/wordsbyfrank, or instagram.com/wordsbyfrank.
Oh wow!
And for YouTube, just go to YouTube browser window and type in my name, Frank Sotzik, Sotzik.
Yeah. So the Avon, how you going? Man, we're back here with Frank. So we're talking about what you've done to promote your book. You also were talking about, PhDs and stuff you've done in the past. Going on what I was talking about before, people getting to know the brand before they know the product. What kind of jobs have you done before going into writing?
I've done all sorts of things, and that makes life fun.
Yeah.
I was actually trained in biochemistry to honours level, and then did a research project on the human thymus, an organ that produces T cells which can be infected by HIV. So the PhD project was to see if a group of early T cells was a new target for HIV infection and might be the cause of AIDS.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've done a lot of medical research jobs as research assistant before I did the PhD in diabetes, and then afterwards doing cancer research and research on parasites that infect drinking water and make it give people diarrhea, trying to develop a new vaccine against rotavirus infection, which causes diarrhea in infants that can be a big cause of death in third world countries.
Yeah.
I've done work as a data manager on cancer clinical trials for 9 months, where I was working on looking at chemotherapy drugs, and together with a radioactive implant that went into the liver for advanced stage liver cancer, to irradiate the liver cancer really quickly because the implant has a short half-life, and then when the radiation goes away, it therefore has little toxicity to the patient. So that was a cancer clinical trial. I've done telesales work as well, at times where I was struggling to find a research job. I worked as a night shift taxi driver on and off for 4 years. I worked as a university lecturer in biomedical science at the University of Notre Dame in Fremantle, here in WA, Western Australia. And I taught subjects, genetics, biochemistry, immunology, first year level physiology, neuroscience, and in addition to that, I've had a number of funny sort of jobs. I remember when I was a high school student, I had been stationed at intersections to count the number of people on buses as they whizzed past and make tally strokes to whether people were turning left or right or going straight ahead at intersections. I've done a little bit of translation work from German into English, not very much. Yeah, I've done a lot of different things, but the main work has been biomedically related, lecturing at university or doing research work, and then also working in my own capacity as an author, and now branching off into giving courses.
Wow, that is really just incredible. Yeah, and you've had some funny stories to tell. Like, this is the part of the segment where, you know, getting towards the end, I usually tell guys to tell a joke. But I know, from knowing you personally, but these guys don't know, you got some funny stories to tell about taxi driving.
Yes, I do. I mean, I used to keep vomit bags in the glove box. And I had 3 vomit bags in the. I had one that was always one that was stationed on the dashboard. I could grab it quickly and hand it to the back rear passengers. It was usually the passengers on the back seat at the left who tended to vomit first. They'd wind down the window and they'd wind it back up again, and they'd sort of be very quiet. And sometimes their friends were a bit sort of sullen, and you'd think, well, this is somebody that might vomit. And then when you started to hear somebody holding their breath and going, you thought, I've got to get the bag to them quickly. So you pull it out and hand it to them, and then you'd hear the chundering noises and everything. And generally I was quite happy because they got it all in the bag and I could keep working. I didn't have to sponge it all off the seats. But the people themselves were very unhappy. Anyway, one time I had just 3 bags, and I thought, how could I possibly need more bags than that? How many more people would vomit on my shift in the taxi other than 3? and then but the taxi seated 5 people, including myself. So I thought, in fact, one time I then had 3 young ladies who were all sick on the same trip, and then it occurred to me that I really should have had a 4th vomit bag, because if I'd had one more passenger, then and they were all sick, then I'd be stuck. But there are many stories one can tell in the taxi. The only problem is, you never know who can be listening, and the person who I tell a story about might actually be in the audience. But there are many, many funny things that happen, many heartwarming things too. People who, you know, were really patient when I got lost, and you know, I was at times I've been an awful taxi driver. Although many people said good things about me, but there were times where I did some very silly things, especially you know, when you get more tired towards the end of a long shift. Sometimes you can, you know, lose your way more easily, and say funny things to the passengers sometimes by mistake.
Don't worry. I do have one funny story I'd just like to tell, just because it's funny. I used to work in this pump factory, guys, in there, and Frank, you know, repairing stuff as an apprentice, and there used to be this old guy. He was the only one nice enough to help me most of the time. Trouble was his English. His English was his second language. He didn't speak a whole lot of it. He speak enough to get by. He speak enough to be employable. He had a lot of skills, but sometimes you'd ask him to do something he didn't quite understand, and he'd just say yes, but he was too nice to say, no, actually, you're on your own here, buddy. But I didn't know that he didn't actually know anything about pool pumps. Anyway, so I got him to help me with the seal, and we accidentally put it in backwards. And he said, don't worry, there's silicon it up. You know, and he was from Singapore. How you make a Singaporean accent? Just imagine that. And he's about 4'2", and he didn't drive, because over where he came from, you didn't need a license. You just gave the police officer, you know, 200 of whatever their currency was, and off you go. Whatever license you got, that's the license. They'll just give you the license for anything. So anyway, I plug in the pump again. It's completely F now that we put the silicon in. There's no going back. And I go, Zosimo, help! And then I see this little ding 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 ding, and he's running away. He's like, sorry mate, not my problem.
So he might have thought that he'd have no problem just by luck, and that it might have worked.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. It's leaking for silicon in it. That's waterproof.
Well, language is a big problem. It was in taxi too, because quite often I'd have people from other countries. I remember there was a guy that I picked up really late at night who couldn't be understood at all, and it wasn't another language problem. He was just incapable of speaking. But I didn't know that initially, and I got him in and asked him where he wanted to go, and couldn't really understand. So I asked him to point, and then I followed his gestures, and after probably 15 or 20 minutes, found that he really didn't know where he was going. So by that stage I'd done a fairly big circle, and I decided to drop him off exactly where I found him. So I cancelled the meter, because I wasn't going to charge him for taking him in a big circle, and then dropped him off where I found him. And he got out of the door, and he got really angry and made loud sort of shouting noises and slammed the door. So I think the problem probably was he knew where he wanted to go, he just couldn't let me know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't read his mind, so I couldn't tell him.
Yeah, for sure. What I always do, man, because it's going to be our last little, it's for 6 minutes till I go off here. Do you have a dirty, just a dad joke, sorry, not a dirty one?
Well, I have a little joke.
Yeah?
Now, you know, like, it's a bit tricky to get my business started sometimes, and, you know, one can feel very nervous. And I remember there's this little story that about Hitler, you know, the dictator from Germany. And the story was that the junior officer whose job it was to dress Hitler, when, you know, and you know, strutted up to him, and then Hitler said, you know, "What shall I wear?" And he was having a very great performance or event that he had to preside over, and the junior officer said, "Well, when Napoleon was addressing the troops, he wore a red jacket so that nobody could see him bleed." So then Hitler said, "Bring me my brown pants."
Oh God, that's pretty good.
Well, he was nervous, of course, you see.
Yeah. Alright, cool. With that note, I'm going to thank you very much for coming in. It's been great having you around, and just great for a catch up. You guys got any last minute requests? It's 96 41 24 22. And as always, Voice of the Avon, VOA 101.3, keeping independent music alive. And you know what, man? I'm going to play something just from Perth. The guy I had in the other day, Blizzard. And this is Squad, Friends Are Four. This was debuted on our station, and it's a pretty nicely produced track.